Captain Li Wujin stood in the Great Hall of Nexus Prime and felt very small. The building was made of crystal that grew from the ground like a giant tree. Light moved through the walls in patterns that hurt his eyes to watch. Around him, creatures from across the galaxy filled seats that floated in the air without touching anything. He had dreamed of this day for 10 years. Today, the Galactic Council would vote on whether humans could join them. After decades of peaceful contact and trade, Earth finally had a chance to become part of something bigger than their small blue world. "The session will begin," announced High Chancellor Vexithera. Her body was made of living crystal that rang like bells when she moved. "Today we decide if the species called humans may join our council." Li Wujin looked at his team. Dr. Park Sola sat to his right, her hands folded tight in her lap. She had spent 5 years learning alien languages and customs for this moment. Ambassador Kang Minho sat straight in his military uniform, watching the alien faces around them with careful eyes. The first speaker was War Prime Gorthak from the hegemony of claws. He was twice as tall as any human. With 4 arms that ended in razor-sharp claws, his species had conquered 100 worlds through pure strength. "Humans are weak," Gorthak said, his voice like grinding metal. "They have no claws, no natural armor, no weapons grown from their own bodies. How can such soft creatures survive in a galaxy full of dangers? They will be eaten by the first predator species they meet." Many aliens nodded their agreement. The spiked ones clicked their approval with sounds like breaking glass. The iron scales hissed through their metal teeth. Dr. Park Sola whispered to Li Wujin, "He thinks strength only comes from claws and teeth." Next came Sage Luminos from the Ethereal Collective. The ancient being floated in a cloud of silver light, its voice speaking directly into their minds without using sound. "We have looked into human thoughts," Luminos said. "Their minds are chaos. They think too many different thoughts at once. They change their minds like weather changes on a storm world. How can we trust beings who do not even agree with themselves?" More aliens showed their agreement. The mind-linked hive shared worried thoughts between themselves. The logic masters calculated that chaos always led to failure. Li Wujin felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his face calm. These aliens saw human differences as weakness. They did not understand that humans could disagree and still work together. The debate went on for hours. Species after species stood to speak against humanity. "They are too young," said Council Member Zektar of the Ancient Ones. "Their civilization is only a few thousand years old. We have been traveling the stars since before their sun was born. They fight among themselves," added Representative Quellos of the Peaceful Union. "How can they bring peace to the galaxy when they cannot find peace on their own world?" "Their technology is primitive," stated Chief Engineer Blix of the Tech Masters. "They still use chemical rockets and metal ships. Their computers are barely smarter than simple calculators." Each word felt like a blow to Li Wujin's chest. Everything they said was partly true, but they missed the whole picture. Yes, humans were young and sometimes fought and had simple technology. But they also had something these ancient species seemed to have lost. Finally, High Chancellor Vexithera called for the human response. Li Wujin stood up. The Great Hall became quiet. 847 species watched him with eyes, sensors, and senses he could not name. "Honored Council," he began, "you speak of our weaknesses, and you are not wrong. We are young. We do fight sometimes. Our technology is simple compared to yours." He looked around the hall, meeting as many alien gazes as he could. "But let me tell you what you have not seen. You say we are weak because we have no claws. But we learned to make tools with our soft hands. We built cities and ships and art that moves our hearts. You say our minds are chaotic. But that chaos lets us think of new ideas that no one has thought before. You say we fight among ourselves. But we also help strangers, save enemies, and sacrifice ourselves for people we have never met." Dr. Park Sola stood beside him. "In our short history, we have gone from living in caves to traveling between stars. We have turned deserts into gardens and learned to cure diseases that once killed millions. We do this not because we are perfect, but because we never give up trying to be better." Ambassador Kang Minho rose as well. "You worry that we are too violent. But the same drive that makes us fight also makes us protect. Human soldiers die to save civilians they do not know. Human doctors work without sleep to heal anyone who needs help, even their enemies." Li Wujin felt the attention of the galaxy focused on him like the heat of a star. You have achieved great things, he continued. Your cities are perfect. Your technology is advanced beyond our dreams. Your civilizations have lasted for millions of years. But when did you last surprise yourselves? When did you last try something that might fail? When did you last change? Some aliens shifted uncomfortably in their floating seats. We humans make mistakes. We are messy and loud and unpredictable. But we are also curious and brave and hopeful. We look at the impossible and ask why not. We fail and get back up and try again. We dream of futures that do not exist yet and work to make them real. Li Wujin spread his arms wide. You ask if we are ready to join you. I ask if you are ready for us to join you. Are you ready for the questions we will ask? Are you ready for the ideas we will share? Are you ready for the changes we will bring? The hall was silent for a long moment. Then High Chancellor Vexthera spoke. The human words are interesting, but words are not deeds. The council will now vote. The voting began. Species after species announced their choice. The results appeared on screens. Of light that floated in the air, the ancient ones vote no. The hegemony of claws votes. So the ethereal collective votes no. The tech masters vote no. Li Wujin watched the numbers change. For every species that voted yes, 5 voted no. His heart sank as the total grew. 700 species against 720, 730. Dr. Park Sola reached over and squeezed his hand. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. When the counting finished, the result was clear. 734 species had voted against humanity. Only 113 had voted in favor. High Chancellor Vexithera's crystal body rang with a sound like breaking bells. The vote is complete. The species known as humans is rejected for membership in the Galactic Council. War Prime Gorthak stood up, his claws gleaming in the crystal light. Perhaps this will teach them humility. They should return to their little blue world and play in their sandbox until they grow up. Many aliens made sounds of agreement, clicking, hissing, humming, and noises that had no human names. Li Wujin felt hollow inside. 10 years of preparation. 5 years of negotiations. All for nothing. You have 72 standard hours to leave council space, High Chancellor Vexithera announced. We thank you for your interest, but the galaxy has spoken. As the Great Hall emptied, Li Wujin and his team gathered their belongings. They had come here with hopes of joining a galactic community. They were leaving as rejected outsiders. Dr. Park Sola was the first to speak as they walked to their ship. Maybe they are right. Maybe we are not ready. Ambassador Kang Minho shook his head. Or maybe they are not ready for us. Li Wujin said nothing. He was thinking about the faces in that hall. So many species, so many worlds, all agreeing that humanity was not good enough. All comfortable in their ancient ways, all afraid of change. As their ship left the crystal docks of Nexus Prime, Li Wujin stood at the observation window and watched the galaxy's greatest city grow small behind them. Somewhere out there among the stars were the homeworlds of species that had just rejected humanity. He wondered if they would ever regret their choice. He did not know that the answer was already coming. In the dark spaces between galaxies, something ancient was stirring. Something that had been sleeping for millions of years was beginning to wake up. Something that would make the galaxy wish they had chosen differently. The vote was over. Humanity had been rejected. But the real test was just beginning. 6 months had passed since the vote. On Earth, life went on as it always had. People worked and loved and dreamed. Children played in parks while their parents watched the stars and wondered what might have been. Admiral Ko Jiho sat in the command center of Luna Station, Earth's main space monitoring facility. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of incoming signals. Most of the signals came from human colonies and trading ships. But some came from much farther away. "Admiral," called Commander Yoon Hana from her station. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range scanners." Ko Jiho walked over to look at her screen. Lines of data scrolled past too fast for normal eyes to follow. But he had been reading space signals for 20 years. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Yoon Hana pointed to a cluster of red dots on the star map. Energy signatures coming from the galactic rim. Very large ones. And they're moving. Moving toward what? "Toward council space, sir," Ko Jiho frowned. The galactic rim was empty. Everyone knew that. It was the edge of everything, where space became dark and cold and nothing lived. "Could be a new species," Yoon Hana suggested. "Maybe they're heading to the council for first contact." "Maybe," Ko Jiho said. But something felt wrong. The energy readings were too big, too strange. Keep monitoring, and patch me through to Dr. Lim Taewon at the archaeological dig. Dr. Lim Taewon was humanities expert on ancient alien ruins. He spent his time digging through the remains of dead civilizations, trying to understand what had happened to them. Most aliens thought his work was useless. They said the past was past and should be forgotten, but humans remembered their history. They studied it and learned from it. Admiral, Dr. Lim's voice came through the speakers. What can I do for you? We're seeing large energy signatures coming from the galactic rim. Have you ever found anything in the ruins about what might be out there? There was a long pause. When Dr. Lim spoke again, his voice was troubled. Actually, yes. I found some tablets on Kepler 442c last year. They talked about something called the Devourers, ancient machines that ate entire civilizations. But the council experts said it was just mythology. Kojiho felt a chill run down his spine. Tell me everything. The tablet said the Devourers came from dark space every few million years. They would consume everything in their path, then disappear back into the void. The last time was supposedly 10 million years ago. 10 million years, Kojiho repeated. That would be about when the precursor civilization vanished? Exactly. The tablets warned that the Devourers would return when the galaxy grew too comfortable, too set in its ways. When creativity and chaos died out, Kojiho looked at the energy readings again. The red dots were moving faster now, heading straight for the heart of council space. Sir, Yunhana called out. I'm getting reports from our deep space monitoring posts. Something just destroyed the Kepler station. Destroyed how? Unknown. It just stopped transmitting. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. More alarms began sounding around the command center. Red lights flashed on screens as reports poured in from across known space. Outpost 77 is gone, reported another officer. The mining station at Vega just went silent. Emergency. Signal from the Andromeda relay. They say something impossible is attacking them. Kojiho watched the reports come in and felt the weight of understanding settle on his shoulders. This was not first contact. This was invasion. Get me a connection to the Galactic Council emergency frequency, he ordered. Sir, we're not supposed to contact them. We were told to stay out of council space. Do it anyway. The main screen flickered and showed the emergency council chamber on Nexus Prime. It was chaos. Aliens ran in all directions while alarms wailed. Emergency Chancellor Zephyros, who had taken over after High Chancellor Vexathara's ship was destroyed, stood at the central podium trying to restore order. Honored species, Zephyros called out. Please remain calm. We are dealing with an unknown threat, but our combined fleets will surely... The transmission cut to static. Sir, Yunhana said quietly, long-range sensors show massive ships entering council space. They're the size of small moons. Kojiho stared at the tactical display. The council's most advanced battle fleets were moving to intercept the unknown ships. He watched as the blue dots representing council forces moved toward the red dots representing the invaders. Then the blue dots started disappearing. What happened to the third fleet? Someone asked, unknown. They just vanished. The hegemony battle group is gone too. How is that possible? Kojiho knew how. He had read the reports Dr. Lim sent him about the ancient tablets. The Devourers did not fight like normal enemies. They did not use weapons that could be understood or defended against. They simply consumed everything in their path. Commander Yun, he said, start recording everything. Every sensor reading, every communication, every piece of data we can gather. Sir, if we're about to watch the galaxy burn, someone needs to remember how it happened. The reports kept coming. Entire star systems went silent in minutes. The Council's most powerful weapons had no effect on the invading ships. The Ethereal Collective's psychic attacks did nothing. The Techmaster's advanced computers could not even identify what they were fighting. Dr. Lim Taewon appeared on a smaller screen, his face pale and worried. Admiral, I've been going through more tablets. The Devourers are not just machines. They're something else. Something that exists partly in normal space and partly somewhere else. They can phase in and out of reality. They can turn matter into energy and energy into nothing. How did anyone survive them before? According to the tablets, they didn't. Every civilization the Devourers encountered was completely destroyed. But the tablets also said something else. They said the Devourers always returned when the galaxy became too ordered, too predictable. When chaos and creativity died out, Kojiho thought about the vote 6 months ago. The galaxy had rejected humanity because they were too chaotic, too unpredictable, too creative. They had chosen order and ancient ways over change and new ideas. Maybe that choice had doomed them all. "Sir?" Yunhana called out. "I'm receiving a transmission. It's on the old diplomatic frequency." "From who?" "Emergency Chancellor Zephyros. It's addressed to Earth." Kojiho stared at the screen. The same aliens who had voted against humanity 6 months ago were now calling for help. "Put it through." Zephyros appeared on the main screen. His crystal body was cracked and dim. Behind him, Kojiho could see smoke and emergency lights. "People of Earth," Zephyros began, his voice broken and desperate. "I know we rejected you. I know we said you were not worthy to join us. But please, if you can hear this, we need your help. Something is destroying us. Something we cannot fight or understand. We have lost half our worlds in 6 days. Our fleets are gone. Our technology is useless." The transmission showed scenes of devastation from across the galaxy. Worlds turned to ash. Fleets of ships reduced to floating debris. Cities that had stood for millions of years reduced to crater-filled wastelands. "We were wrong about you," Zephyros continued. "We thought your chaos was weakness. We thought your unpredictability was a flaw. But maybe that is exactly what we need now. Maybe your chaos is the only thing that can save us." The transmission ended with a plea that echoed through the silent command center. "Please, help us." Kojiho looked around at his officers. They were all watching him, waiting for orders. Outside the station's windows, Earth turned slowly in space, peaceful and blue and completely unaware that the galaxy was dying. "Sir?" Yunhana asked quietly. "What do we do?" Kojiho thought about the vote 6 months ago. He thought about War Prime Gorthak telling humans to go back to their sandbox and play. He thought about all the species that had called humanity too weak, too chaotic, too young to matter. But he also thought about the emergency in Zephyros's voice. He thought about entire civilizations being wiped out while they watched. He thought about what his daughter would say if she knew he had a chance to help and chose not to. "Contact the Global Defense Council," he said finally. "Tell them we need an emergency session. And get me a secure line to Fleet Admiral Li Wujin." "Are we really going to help them, sir?" asked another officer. Kojiho looked at the tactical display where red dots continued to spread across the galaxy like a disease. "The same galaxy that rejected us is burning," he said. "The question is not whether they deserve our help. The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we do nothing." As alarms continued to sound and reports of destruction poured in from across known space, Kojiho began to understand something important. The galaxy had voted against humanity because they feared human chaos and unpredictability. But chaos and unpredictability might be exactly what was needed to fight an enemy that no one else could understand. The galaxy was learning that their greatest strength might have been the species they chose to reject, and time was running out to fix their mistake. The emergency session of Earth's Global Defense Council took place in Geneva, in the same building where humans had once argued about trade agreements and border disputes. Now they were deciding whether to risk everything for a galaxy that had rejected them. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by representatives from every nation on Earth. The holographic displays around the room showed the spreading destruction across galactic space. Red zones marked worlds that had gone silent. The red was spreading like spilled blood across the star maps. "They rejected us," said General Park Hyunjae, his voice hard with old anger. "They called us weak and chaotic. They told us to go home and play in our sandbox. Now they want our help?" President Kim Yoon-ji leaned forward in her chair. "The question is not what they did to us. The question is what we do now. Are we the kind of species that watches genocide happen because our feelings were hurt?" "It's not about hurt feelings," argued Director Chen Weilong from the Pacific Alliance. "It's about survival. If we send our fleets to help them, we might lose everything. Earth could be left defenseless." Dr. Cho Min-seok, head of Earth's Xenotechnology Research Division, stood up from his seat. "May I share what we've learned about these devourers?" Fleet Admiral Li Wujin nodded. "Please." Dr. Cho activated the main hologram. It showed a massive ship, dark and angular with surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Based on the sensor data Admiral Kojiho has gathered, these machines are unlike anything in known space. They don't just destroy things, they consume them. They turn matter into energy and energy into something else entirely. They can phase in and out of normal space, which makes conventional weapons useless. So how do we fight something like that? Asked President Kim Yoon-ji. We don't fight them the same way the galaxy has been trying to fight them, Dr. Cho replied. The Council species have been using their most advanced weapons, their most sophisticated tactics, their most perfect battle plans, and they're losing badly. Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin stepped forward. Dr. Cho's team has found something interesting. The Devourers seem to work by analyzing and adapting to whatever attacks them. They study their enemies' patterns and then develop perfect counters, which means, asked General Park Hyun-jae. Which means they can't adapt to something that has no pattern, Dr. Cho said. They can't counter tactics that don't make sense. They can't predict behavior that is truly random. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. You're talking about the same chaos they rejected us for. President Kim Yoon-ji said slowly. Exactly, Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin confirmed. Every species in the galaxy fights the same way they fought for millions of years. Perfect formations, logical tactics, predictable strategies. The Devourers have learned to counter all of that. Dr. Cho brought up more data. But humans fight differently. We improvise. We break our own rules. We do things that don't make tactical sense, but somehow work anyway. We're unpredictable because we don't even know what we're going to do next. Captain Nam Seung-ho, who had been silent until now, stood up. Sir, I've been running simulations with my squadron. If we use standard galactic battle tactics, we lose every time. But if we fight like humans how? Asked General Park Hyun-jae. Like we're crazy, Captain Nam said with a grin. Random flight patterns. Weapons that shouldn't work together. Ships that break apart and come back together in new configurations. Tactics that make no sense to anyone, including us. President Kim Yoon-ji looked around the chamber at the faces of Earth's leaders. So our choice is to send our fleets into a war we might not survive, using tactics that might not work, to save people who rejected us 6 months ago. That's about right, Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin said. And if we lose, then Earth becomes the last free world in the galaxy, until the Devourers decide to come here too. The debate that followed was fierce. Some argued for isolation, for protecting Earth and letting the galaxy face the consequences of their choices. Others argued for limited help, sending just enough forces to make a difference without risking everything. But Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin knew what he had to argue for. Honored representatives, he said when the arguments died down. 6 months ago, I stood in the Galactic Council chamber and told them that humanity was ready to join the galactic community. They voted no. They said we were too young, too chaotic, too unpredictable. He gestured to the displays showing the spreading destruction. They were wrong about chaos being a weakness, but they were right about one thing. We are different from them. We are unpredictable. We do break rules and try impossible things, and maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. President Kim Yoon-ji studied his face. You're not just talking about military tactics, are you? No, ma'am. I'm talking about who we are as a species. The galaxy chose order over chaos, predictability over creativity, ancient wisdom over new ideas, and now they're dying because of that choice. Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin walked to the center of the chamber. If we help them, we're not just saving their lives. We're proving that their way is not the only way. We're showing them that chaos and creativity and unpredictability are not flaws to be fixed, but gifts to be celebrated. Dr. Cho Min-seok nodded. The Devourers represent perfect order, perfect logic, perfect predictability. Maybe the only way to fight perfect order is with perfect chaos. General Park Hyun-jae was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, what would we be sending them into? A war unlike anything humans have ever fought, Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin admitted. Against an enemy that has destroyed civilizations for millions of years, with tactics that have never been tested, using weapons and strategies that shouldn't work. How many ships? Asked President Kim Yoon-ji. All of them. The chamber erupted in arguments again. Send all of Earth's fleets? Leave the homeworld defenseless? Risk everything on an untested theory? But Captain Nam Seung-ho stood up, and his voice cut through the noise. With respect, ma'am, if the Devourers win in council space, they'll come here eventually anyway. We can fight them there with the galaxy's help, or we can fight them here alone. And if our chaos tactics don't work? Asked Director Chen Wai-long. Fleet Admiral Lee Woo-jin met his eyes. Then we'll have died trying to do the right thing. But if they do work? If we can show the galaxy that their way is not the only way, Then maybe we change everything. The vote, when it came, was closer than Fleet Admiral Li Wujin had hoped, but not as close as he had feared. 73 nations voted to send the fleets. 42 voted against. The rest abstained. President Kim Yoon-ji stood up as the final votes were counted. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin, you are authorized to mobilize Earth's combined space forces for humanitarian intervention in galactic space. Your mission is to assist in the defense against the Devourer threat using whatever means you deem necessary. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin saluted. Understood, ma'am. We'll bring our chaos to the party. As the session ended and representatives filed out, President Kim Yoon-ji approached Fleet Admiral Li Wujin. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. No, ma'am. I'm not sure about anything, but I know that doing nothing isn't who we are. And if the galaxy still rejects us after we save them, Fleet Admiral Li Wujin smiled. Then we'll know we did the right thing anyway. Over the next 72 hours, Earth became a hive of activity unlike anything in human history. Every spaceship capable of combat was recalled to Earth orbit. Military vessels, converted cargo ships, private yachts with weapon modifications, even mining ships with improvised armaments. Dr. Cho Min-suk's teams worked around the clock, installing new weapon systems that violated every rule of galactic engineering. Missile launchers that fired in random patterns. Shield generators that turned on and off according to chaos algorithms. Communication systems designed to be unpredictable. Captain Nam Seung-ho led training exercises that looked more like organized confusion than military drills. Ships broke formation on purpose. Pilots ignored orders and improvised new tactics on the spot. Gunners fired at targets they couldn't see based on nothing but intuition. To any galactic observer, it would have looked like complete madness, which was exactly the point. Lieutenant Bae Young-soo, one of Earth's best fighter pilots, summed it up during a briefing with his squadron. Everything we've been taught about space combat is based on galactic standards. Perfect formations, logical targeting, predictable movements. The Devourers have learned to counter all of that. So we're going to fight like humans instead. What does that mean? Asked one of the younger pilots. It means we're going to be completely insane, Lieutenant Bae replied. And hopefully that will be enough. As the human fleet gathered in Earth orbit, Admiral Ko Ji-ho sent regular updates about the situation in galactic space. The news was all bad. More worlds were falling every hour. The Council's remaining fleets were in full retreat. Emergency Chancellor Zephyros had abandoned Nexus Prime and was coordinating the defense from a mobile command ship. But there was one piece of good news. The Devourers were slowing down, not because they were being stopped, but because they were being methodical. They were taking time to completely consume each world they conquered, which meant there was still time. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, and Fleet Admiral Li Wujin immediately knew they were in trouble. The space around them was filled with debris from what had once been the galaxy's third combined fleet, twisted metal and burning. Fragments drifted in all directions like a graveyard of stars, sir, called Commander Shin Do-yun from his position at the sensor station. I'm reading massive energy signatures ahead. 3 Devourer ships, each one the size of Earth's moon. Captain Nam Seung-ho's voice came over the communication system from his fighter squadron. Admiral, my scouts are reporting something weird. The Devourer ships aren't moving. They're just sitting there. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin studied the tactical display. The enemy ships hung in space like dark mountains, their surfaces absorbing light and making them look like holes cut out of reality itself. They're studying us, said Dr. An Ji-won, the fleet's chief science officer. The Devourers always analyze new opponents before attacking. They're trying to understand our technology and predict our tactics. How long do we have? Fleet Admiral Li Wujin asked. Based on what happened to other fleets, maybe 10 minutes. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin smiled grimly. Then we'd better not give them time to figure us out. All ships execute Pattern Chaos 1. What happened next would have horrified any galactic military strategist. The human fleet didn't form battle lines or organize into logical attack groups. Instead, they scattered in every direction like a flock of startled birds. Captain Nam Seung-ho led his fighter squadron in a spiraling attack pattern that made no mathematical sense. His ships flew in loops and curves that followed no logical sequence. Lieutenant Bae Young-soo broke off from the main group and started flying directly toward one of the Devourer ships, spinning his fighter end over end while firing his weapons randomly. What is he doing? Dr. An Ji-won asked. watching the tactical display with confusion. Being unpredictable, Fleet Admiral Li Wujin replied. The first Devourer ship finally moved, turning its massive bulk toward the approaching human forces. Weapons that could reshape matter fired beams of energy that should have destroyed everything they touched. But Lieutenant Bei Youngsu's random spinning saved his life. The Devourer weapons were designed to hit targets moving in logical patterns. They couldn't track a fighter that was tumbling chaotically through space. His missiles, fired at random intervals, somehow managed to hit the Devourer ship's hull. The explosions were tiny compared to the massive vessel, but they were the first successful hits anyone had scored against a Devourer in 2 weeks. Impossible, Dr. An Ji-won whispered. His targeting system wasn't even locked on. He wasn't using his targeting system, Fleet Admiral Li Wujin explained. He was firing by instinct. Across the battlefield, other human ships were achieving equally impossible results. Commander Shin Do-hyun's destroyer somehow survived a direct hit from a Devourer energy beam by shutting down all power at exactly the right moment. The ship drifted dead in space, looking destroyed, until the Devourer moved on to other targets. Then Commander Shin powered up again and attacked from behind. "Sir," called Petty Officer Ryu Min-jae from the engineering station. "The Harmony is taking heavy damage, but I think I can jury-rig the shield generators to work backwards." "Backwards how?" "Instead of keeping energy out, we make them pull energy in. It shouldn't work, but maybe that's the point." Fleet Admiral Li Wujin didn't hesitate. "Do it." What Petty Officer Ryu did next violated every principle of shield technology. He reversed the polarity of the generators and created a field that actually attracted enemy fire. The Devourer weapons, designed to penetrate or bypass shields, were suddenly pulled into a swirling vortex of energy that fed back into the ship's own systems. The Harmony became stronger every time the Devourers shot at it. "How is that possible?" Dr. An Ji-won asked. "It's not," Petty Officer Ryu replied cheerfully. "That's why it works." The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They used their own vessels as shields, then ejected their crews in escape pods at the last second before ramming Devourer ships. They modified their weapons during battle, creating new configurations faster than the Devourers could adapt. Captain Jang Tae-hyung commanded a ship that was more spare parts than original design. His crew had rebuilt their vessel so many times during the battle that it barely resembled what they had started with. When his main engines failed, they used the escape pod thrusters. When his weapons ran out of ammunition, they started firing pieces of the ship itself. "Captain," called his navigator, "we've lost primary navigation. I have no idea where we are." "Perfect," Captain Jang replied. "Plot a course for somewhere we can't possibly reach and see what happens." What happened was that his ship, flying according to impossible navigation, somehow ended up inside the defensive perimeter of a Devourer vessel. Before the ancient machine could react, Captain Jang's crew fired everything they had at the enemy's core systems. The Devourer ship shuddered, its perfect surfaces flickering. "With chaotic energy patterns, I think we broke something important," the navigator reported. News of the human successes spread quickly through the scattered remains of the galactic fleets. Ships that had been retreating in panic suddenly stopped running. The crystalline consortium vessels, with their perfect geometric formations, began flying in loose, chaotic patterns like the humans. The tech masters started modifying their weapons in the middle of battle. War Prime Gorthak's heir, commanding the last battle group of the hegemony of claws, contacted Fleet Admiral Li Wujin directly. "Human Admiral," the alien warrior said, "teach us to fight like you do." "There's nothing to teach," Fleet Admiral Li Wujin replied. "Stop thinking and start feeling. Stop planning and start reacting. Stop being perfect and start being impossible." "I do not understand." "Good. Understanding is overrated. Just follow my ships and do whatever feels wrong." What followed was the strangest military alliance in galactic history. Ancient species that had fought with logical precision for millions of years began copying human chaos tactics. They broke their own formations, ignored their own battle plans, and started making decisions based on intuition instead of analysis. The Devourers, for the first time in their long existence, began to falter. Their adaptive systems, designed to counter logical opposition, couldn't handle the spreading chaos. Every time they adapted to a human tactic, the humans changed to something completely different. But the real turning point came when Dr. An Jiwan made a discovery that changed everything. "Admiral," she called out excitedly, "I've been studying the Devourer energy patterns. I think I know what they really are." "Tell me." "They're not just machines. They're a kind of artificial intelligence, but one based on pure logic and order. They exist in a state of perfect mathematical harmony. That's why they can phase in and out of normal space and why their weapons work the way they do." "So how do we beat perfect logic?" Dr. Anjiwan smiled. "With perfect illogic. I think I can modify our quantum communication array to broadcast chaos directly into their systems." "Broadcast chaos?" "Random number sequences. Contradictory mathematical equations. Music that doesn't follow any pattern. Human poetry. Everything that makes no logical sense." Fleet Admiral Li Wujin stared at her. "You want to defeat them with poetry?" "Among other things, yes." 20 minutes later, every human ship in the fleet was broadcasting a chaotic mixture of human culture directly at the Devourer vessels. Random music, abstract art, contradictory philosophy, and most effective of all, human emotions. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Devourer ships began to shake and flicker as their perfect logical systems tried to process information that made no sense. Their movements became erratic. Their weapons fired randomly. One by one, the ancient machines began to shut down. "It's working," Dr. An Jiwan reported. "Their systems can't handle pure chaos. They're going into some kind of logical feedback loop." But victory came at a cost. The human fleet had lost nearly half its ships in the battle. Thousands of brave men and women had died to prove that chaos could triumph over order. As the last Devourer ship went silent, Fleet Admiral Li Wujin received a transmission from Emergency Chancellor Zephyros. "Human Admiral," the crystalline leader said, "we have monitored your battle. What you have done should be impossible. Your tactics make no sense. Your weapons should not work. Your ships should have been destroyed in the first minutes of combat." "But they weren't," Fleet Admiral Li Wujin replied. "No, they were not. And because of that, you have achieved what the greatest fleets in galactic history could not. You have stopped the Devourers." Fleet Admiral Li Wujin looked around his damaged bridge at his exhausted crew, at the debris field that had once been proud ships and brave souls. "We've stopped them here," he said, "but there are more out there. This was just the beginning. Then we will fight them together," Emergency Chancellor Zephyros replied. "All of us using your methods." Learning your chaos, Captain Nam Seung-ho's voice came over the communications channel. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic core. Something big is coming." Fleet Admiral Li Wujin studied the sensor readings and felt his heart sink. The approaching signature was 10 times larger than anything they had just fought. The Devourer Prime emerged from the dark space between galaxies like a nightmare made real. It was larger than most moons, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. As it moved through space, reality itself seemed to bend around it. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin stood on the bridge of the rebuilt Harmony and watched the sensor readings with a mixture of awe and terror. Around him, the combined fleets of the galaxy had gathered for what everyone knew would be the final battle. Human ships flew alongside crystalline consortium vessels. The hegemony of claws fought next to the peaceful ethereal collective. Species that had never worked together were now united by necessity and human-taught chaos. "Sir," reported Commander Yoon Hana, "the Prime is affecting local space-time. Our navigation systems are going crazy." "Good," Fleet Admiral Li Wujin replied. "Crazy is what we do best." Emergency Chancellor Zephyros appeared on the main communication screen, his crystal form flickering with nervous energy. "Admiral Li, our combined fleets number over 2 million ships. But our sensors indicate the Devourer Prime has the mass and energy output of a small star. How do we fight something like that?" Fleet Admiral Li Wujin looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These humans had already done the impossible once. Now they needed to do it again, but bigger. "The same way we fought the others," he said. "We be so chaotic that it can't predict us, so random that it can't adapt, so impossible that it breaks." Dr. Park Sola, who had returned from Earth with reinforcements and new weapons, stepped forward. "Admiral, I've been working with scientists from across the galaxy. We think we understand how the Devourer Prime controls all the other machines. Tell me, it's like a giant computer that processes pure logic. Every Devourer ship is connected to it through something like quantum entanglement. The Prime calculates the perfect response to any threat and sends those instructions instantly across space." Captain Jang Taehyung, His ship, now held together with spare parts from 6 different species, spoke up from his communication channel. So if we can confuse the Prime, we confuse all of them? Exactly. But it would take more chaos than we've ever generated before. We'd need to overload its processing capacity completely. Engineer Moon Seojin, who had spent the last 3 days building impossible weapons from salvaged alien technology, raised his hand. I might have an idea about that. He brought up a holographic display showing a device that looked like it had been designed by someone who had never heard of physics. What am I looking at? Fleet Admiral Li Wujin asked. A chaos generator. It takes random input from every ship in the fleet and amplifies it into pure, concentrated confusion. Music, art, emotions, random thoughts, contradictory data, everything that makes humans human. And then, we fire it directly into the Devourer Prime's processing core. Dr. Park Sola stared at the design. This device shouldn't work. The power requirements alone are impossible. Which is why it will work, Engineer Moon Seojin replied with a grin. I built it using human engineering principles. It only works because it shouldn't. The battle plan they developed was the most insane strategy in military history. The entire combined fleet would fly directly at the Devourer Prime in a formation that changed randomly every few seconds. Each ship would broadcast different types of chaos. Music from 1,000 worlds. Art that made no sense. Stories that contradicted themselves. Mathematical equations that solved for infinity. This is madness, declared War Prime Gorthax Air, who now commanded a mixed squadron of humans and hegemony warriors. Yes, agreed Fleet Admiral Li Wujin. That's the point. As the fleets moved toward the Devourer Prime, reality began to break down around them. Space itself became unstable. Ships found themselves flying through dimensions that didn't exist. Time moved in loops and spirals, but the human crews kept flying. They navigated by instinct when their instruments failed. They fired weapons that shouldn't exist at targets they couldn't see. They held their ships together through sheer willpower when the laws of physics gave up. Captain Nam Sung-ho led the first wave of fighters into the reality distortion field around the Devourer Prime. His squadron scattered in all directions, following flight patterns based on ancient human dances, mathematical sequences from Earth poetry, and the migration routes of extinct birds. I have no idea where I am or where I'm going, he reported cheerfully. It's perfect. The Devourer Prime responded by unleashing weapons that rewrote the fundamental laws of existence. Matter became energy. Energy became thought. Thought became reality. But human chaos proved stronger than logical perfection. Lieutenant Bae Young-soo flew his fighter through a region where up and down had switched places, navigating by the rhythm of a song his grandmother used to sing. His missiles, fired according to the pattern of raindrops on a window, somehow found their way through impossible geometry to strike the Prime's hull. Commander Shin Do-hyun's destroyer was hit by a weapon that turned his ship's metal into flower petals. Instead of panicking, his crew started using the petals as improvised repair materials. Somehow it worked better than the original design. Sir, called Dr. An Ji-won from her science station, the chaos generator is ready, but we need to get close enough to the Prime's core to fire it. Fleet Admiral Li Wujin looked at the tactical display. The Devourer Prime's core was protected by layers of reality distortion that had already destroyed dozens of ships. Captain Zhang, he called over the communication channel, how fast can your ship go when everything is broken? Faster than it should, sir. This thing doesn't follow normal physics anymore. Good. You're our delivery system. What followed was the most impossible journey in spaceflight history. Captain Jang Taehyung's ship, which was now more creative engineering than original design, flew directly into the heart of the Devourer Prime. The vessel passed through walls of solid energy, navigated storms of liquid mathematics, and flew upside down through regions where causality ran backwards. Navigation is completely useless, reported his pilot. Excellent, Captain Zhang replied. Plot a course for the most impossible place you can think of. They found the core by accident, which was exactly how they had planned to find it. Engineer Moon Seojin's chaos generator powered up, drawing random input from every human ship in the fleet. The device broadcast the collected chaos of humanity directly into the Devourer Prime's processing center. Music from Earth's greatest composers mixed with the laughter of children playing. Mathematical proofs were interrupted by love poems. Military orders were replaced by recipes for soup. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The Devourer Prime began to shake as its perfect logical systems tried to process pure human randomness. Its weapons fired in random directions. Its movements became erratic. "It's working," Dr. Park Sola reported. "The Prime's processing matrix is overloading." But the ancient machine fought back. It began broadcasting pure logic into space, trying to impose order on the chaos. Reality stabilized. Physics reasserted itself. The human chaos tactics began to fail as everything returned to normal. "Sir," Engineer Moon Seojin called out, "I need more chaos, more randomness, something the Prime has never encountered before." Fleet Admiral Li Wujin looked around his bridge and suddenly understood what they needed. "All ships," he broadcast on every channel. "This is Admiral Li Wujin. The Devourer Prime is trying to impose order on our chaos. It's trying to make everything logical and predictable again." He paused, thinking about the vote 6 months ago, about the galaxy's fear of human unpredictability. "So I want everyone to do something completely irrational. Something that makes no sense. Something that no logical mind could ever predict. Show this machine what it means to be alive." What happened next could never be recorded in any official military history, because it was too crazy to believe. Across the fleet, humans and aliens began doing things that made no tactical sense whatsoever. They sang songs in the middle of battle. They painted pictures on their hull plating. They told jokes over the communication channels. They declared their love for people they had never met. Captain Nam Seung-ho started flying his fighter in patterns that spelled out his mother's name. War Prime Gorthek's heir began reciting human poetry in his warrior's ancient battle language. Emergency Chancellor Zephyros transmitted crystalline music that told the story of his childhood. The Devourer Prime's logical systems couldn't handle it. How do you counter an attack made of pure emotion? How do you defend against weapons made of hope and love and laughter? The ancient machine began to break down. Its perfect surfaces cracked. Its reality-warping weapons flickered and died. Across the galaxy, every remaining Devourer ship simply stopped functioning. The Devourer Prime gave one final pulse of desperate logic, trying to restore order to the universe. Then it went dark. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in weeks, space was peaceful. "Sir," whispered Commander Yoon Hana, "did we win?" Fleet Admiral Li Wujin looked at the sensor readings showing the dead Devourer Prime, floating motionless in space. "We won," he confirmed. The celebration that followed lasted for days. Across the galaxy, worlds that had been silent came back online. Fleets that had been scattered regrouped. The ancient threat was finally over. But the real victory came later when the Galactic Council reconvened.